Hello, happy Tuesday. Welcome to Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo and AMD. I'm here, Ashley, your host, and we are getting into, I believe it's week 3 of our monster. I think we did the drawing, and then we did the block out of the sculpt yesterday or the last week, and so yeah, here we are into 3, I believe. But yeah, so if you didn't join us for either of those and you're a newcomer to Archetype, this is what we got working on. So we are doing for now I'm calling it a pangolion. Haha, get it? But we'll see if we can come up with a more fun name. I think that one's okay for now. Probably won't end up coming up with a different name, but this is what we sketched out on the first week and then gathered some reference and blocked in our character this last week, and so now we're just going to keep refining. That's kind of the fun part about working on something that's, entirely organic, as we get to kind of refine all these forms and just work on all that stuff. I'm going to work on the head probably first and start getting in some shapes and some ideas of how I kind of want to refine and finish this guy. And then next week will be probably some more refinement along with posing. So I always like to pose my characters at the end of these streams. We'll go from there. So if you're in the chat, say hi. I already see that JD Smith is in the chat. Hello. I'm gonna go ahead and start putting in, I don't like to put an eye super early. I like to try to get a block in of that eye shape first. Hi, Uger. Sorry if I don't pronounce names properly, but from YouTube. But yeah, I like to get in kind of just an eye shape first to get an idea of shapes before putting in the eyeball. And part of that is, if I start changing, and you'll see maybe this will happen. Whereas if I start changing the proportions of our character, if I'm like, oh, the eyes are too wide, or I need to bring them in or out, or do, something else kind of funky. Then I also have another object that I have to take and change size and move stuff in. So I usually won't actually put in other objects until I feel pretty happy with the overall feel of this character. But yeah, now I can start kind of defining some shapes in the face. I think what I like is the idea of kind of like a carapace on top. So I'm going to refine and kind of flatten out the top of the head, but later, oh good, I I got the pronunciation correct. Thank you for letting me know. Yeah, I'm going to refine the top of the head, but I'm going to probably do an extraction once I have a nice ZRemesh of this. Usasedo, hello. Lots of people on YouTube turning in. But yeah, once I have a better block out, then I think I'm going to add like the little carapace on top of his nose there. I'm going to kind of just refine some of these forms. I'm also going to, because this isn't, we're leaning towards slightly more realistic. It's not super stylized, but it is still slightly. Our robot camp character from last month wasn't super realistic. So again, to stick with that same world, I want to make sure that it feels a bit more exaggerated proportions, or maybe just some like sharper lines and things like that, and get a bit of that kind of aesthetic going and see how that feels. I'm kind of going for maybe like a Monster Hunter type where, realistic kind of textures, but the style or the shapes are pretty pushed. Because I think that will fit fairly well with what our mech was before. Our mech had some realistic ideas of, articulation and stuff like that, but it wasn't, leaning on like Vitaly Bulgarov type mech design, because that's not my expertise. So yeah, we went with like a slightly more stylized feel. So I want this guy to feel kind of in that same vein. So, you know, we can start sharpening up some of these forms to get a bit of realm of stylization in this stuff. I'm going to sharpen his brow a bit more. I might not have all the topology yet to kind of create that eye socket, which again, you know, creating an eyeball too early on can always kind of be more detrimental than helpful sometimes when it comes to character like creature design work. Kind of depends. And also human work. It's something that I tend to not add for a little while for that reason, but we're kind of just getting something more solidified. I also think these guys later on should probably get pushed back a bit more, and then we're going to have we'll sculpt out, or we can insert mesh a few more scales and stuff later. We can push some of that back for now. So you can get a better idea of where space lies. So yeah, I think I want to kind of square off like a decent amount of stuff. So when we look at his silhouette here, I think it would be nice to kind of square this jaw up. You can also, if you want to make sharper squared off things, there's a helpful thing you can do with your move tool. So this by default does like a pretty, you know, soft kind of fall off. And actually that's kind of cool, right? Maybe that's something we could think about, how the plating could work. But, you know, the fall off's pretty smooth. But if we go to brush and then you go to curve and you turn on this Acu curve, if I pull out that same thing now, you can see that it actually kind of pulls out into a point. So this is kind of a helpful way to grab stuff and kind of make it sharper. So if you want to grab, you know, like the ears and kind of make sure that the ears get pointed out, that could be an option. Or just start getting some more. It's really more about just getting some more angles into your sculpt, so you don't have as much of a light fall off. It's kind of a handy tool if you're looking for something like that. So we can kind of start, you know, pointing this stuff and getting some angles. So we can see if it starts to feel a bit more in the realm of stylized. For stuff like this is also a great example of being able to use the Acu curve to your advantage. Getting these nice little sharp angular lines. You can see what I mean by adding eyes too early. See how they now disappeared because I made it wider or did whatever. And this is kind of the part that I would say actively try to avoid. But I'm not going to make hopefully too many more changes to this. I'm going to go ahead and probably ZRemesh it and then start detailing on top of that instead of detailing onto this Nanomesh here. So yeah, we have this, and we can keep these separate if we want, or we can choose to you know, merge it together. I think for this, probably just be easier to merge them together. It'll be probably simple enough to, you know, if I want to pull the ears back or, you know, give like some sort of expression later. I don't think that's going to be too hard with the face together. Now, one thing that I do want to do actually before Z-remeshing it is I think I want to give him like an actual mouth, because later maybe I want him to snarl or do something like that. I think that would be kind of cool. And again, you're very limited if we don't have a mouth here. So I also wanted to show you guys how I kind of approach making a mouth. So for making the mouth, I'll always make sure that I am grabbing it from where the pivot point actually is. So I'm not just going to try to move the front of the mouth. I actually want to think about anatomically where that pivot point is in the skull of the jaw, because that's going to give you a more accurate mouth open and rotation. So something like that I think works just fine. So I can go ahead and pop the jaw open. And you're always going to get little issues. So you can either smooth it out and then you can re-Dynamesh it, and then you can kind of do that. And now you can see you have this like weird stretching, but it's totally fine. I'm just going to go in and try to find a place where the mouth opening kind of would be. I'm going to invert that. And then it seems really scary, but I'm just going to pull this in and all the way back. So you get something like that. And then I'll re-Dynamesh it. And then I can kind of fill in these things that aren't working super well, like this area. Re-Dynamesh that. Anything, you can just kind of inflate anything that's kind of not working for you, and it'll go away pretty quickly. Here we go. Evan, happy Tuesday. So yeah, before ZRemeshing, I'll obviously add basically just like the mouth bag. So that way later we can, and you can always close the mouth later and sculpt that way. I'll probably just leave the mouth open slightly because it's easier. I'll bring this forward. You can always kind of adjust where this is going to be, where the skin's going to rotate off now. And we can add some more geometry to kind of give that cool little extra lip muscles and things like that too. Go ahead and carve down in here. And this is also going to be a jumping off point for making teeth and for making the gums and all that jazz too. And they're usually pretty easy to set up. I have already custom teeth and stuff, but I can, for the sake of the demo, I will make all that stuff from scratch because you'll see how quickly it actually all comes together. So there we go. Now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to duplicate this. There's not that much detail that I need to keep, but I know that my ZRemesh is probably going to be fairly low. So I'll duplicate my model, turn off Dynamesh. I'm going to go ahead and group these things based off of kind of the poly loops that I would want. I want one up the top of the head because this will also be easier to extract the carapace later as well. You know, that's going to go on top of this head that we'll sculpt on top of. So just trying to think of where I want loops. And I'm just polygrouping along. And you'll see we have some weirdness there. But I can turn on, I always like to turn on double to make sure that I can grab it from an area that's not gonna hinder me later. And there you go. So now I have some colors, and then I can go ahead and grab this part here, and I'm gonna go ahead and just use the mask pen tool. Oops, mine's always, I gotta reset this thing. I always accidentally have curve mode on for some reason. So go ahead and mask the inside of the mouth here. Like to harden it to make sure that I have all the polygroups, and then polygroup that, and that looks pretty clean. And then we can do the same on the bottom. There we go. And then if we want to, we can make sure that, you know, you want to kind of avoid little things like this, you know, for ZRemeshing. So we can just make sure that that's part of something different, that's part of the same, and then maybe this will be the same. So you just want kind of cleaner loops than what that was kind of giving you. Anything that's left is like a little island will kind of struggle with being used. And you also want to make sure you try to avoid anything that got too thin as well. So your mesher will probably not like you for that one. Oops, I had groups turned on accidentally. There we go. Now I can select this, and if I wanted to, I could also isolate this inner ear here. Something like that. That looks okay to me. Maybe my last little thing is to make sure that I have kind of an area where there's going to be an eyeball. So I'll group that to be a color that I can tell what's the difference. There we go. Something like that. Cool. And then once that's good, now we can turn off Nanomesh. Now I can just say keep groups and do a little ZRemesh on it. We'll see what we get. That's not bad. I'll always go for a half. I'll try to get it as low as possible. And always this kind of stuff will happen, so you kind of want to avoid that. So that's looking okay. I think that's going to be low enough for us to work with and be happy about. As long as there's nice loops that go around the mouth and stuff, I'm okay. So now we can go ahead and hide this and bring back our Dynamesh, right? And I'm going to subdivide this, and then I'll project onto it. And now we have our Dynamesh onto our ZRemesh. That looks pretty good. So now we can go ahead and take our Dynamesh and just get rid of that one. I like to delete stuff because then I'll version up anyway. So if I need to go back to it, I can just open up another file and save it. Now I'll turn back on everything and see what we got. Now I can start sculpting on some more detail. And this part of the process, I think, is probably everybody's, I would imagine everybody's favorite process. But if you guys have a certain part of this design process that you guys like, definitely tell me in the comments. But yeah, I'm a big fan of just sitting and sculpting. You know, this is the part where you just get to kind of zone out and focus on looking at your reference and thinking about, you know, what kind of shapes you're using and refining those shapes. This is where you can kind of find like a nice, you know, artist flow. Just kind of hang out. Hopefully maybe you guys are sculpting along with me or whatever it may be. It could be like the Bob Ross of digital sculpting. Find your happy place. A lot of things about when it comes to detailing, I find like it's even if you're doing realistic stuff, you know, I think it's a habit that we just want to go crazy everywhere with detail because we can. But you know, you want to remember that we're still following a lot of design rules and functions. You know, those rules of 3 or you know, when it comes to making something feel natural or organic, we want areas of busy versus areas of rest. And things like that. So it's still important to, you know, when I say zone out, you know, your brain's not entirely off. You still want to think about, you know, what forms follow function and think about what's going to be interesting for your character and make the most sense for like who they are, what they do, or what's going to be visually interesting or appealing. You know, maybe we could sharpen up this angle. And this is where I like to use a certain smooth brush. I think I've mentioned it before, but the smooth directional is a really great brush. So if you go into brushes, you go to the smooth folder. There's going to be this one here, smooth directional. If you click that, that's going to be super handy. I showed I think our last character, I showed the smooth groups, how you can group things and get a really smooth edge. So these two are really handy, but the other ones also work really nicely too, but I use smooth directional a lot. Because if you smooth in the direction of the form, it'll try to maintain the form. And if you smooth the opposite direction, it'll smooth it out. So it's a really easy way to kind of create an organicness to your forms. One of my favorite brushes to use. And for a long time, I didn't know it existed. So I'm going to show you guys that it exists. I also try to work, I have more subdivisions in this, right? So I'm only on 3 and I have 5. I probably don't even need 5 at this point. But I like to try to get, even when I'm subdividing stuff, I like to try to get the most out of each subdivision level before kind of moving on to the next. It's helpful to go up one and see how it's looking to you know, smooth stuff out or to refine like other extra little forms. But I try to be really careful about not going too high too fast. We do get really excited and we just want to, you know, subdivide and be like, oh yeah, time to get in and like do all this crazy detail. But you can do all that crazy detail at lower levels and still get pretty good results. And then you can just refine on top of the higher subdivisions. Got my coffee break in. So now we can go ahead and add some gums and some more teeth. You know, we already have these teeth, so I should be able to easily duplicate these and, you know, scale them down and create all the other teeth. But I'll go ahead and duplicate my model, go to the lowest subdivision level. I'll delete higher. I can take this, and I can take that. There we go. And then I can delete hidden. So I'm going to get rid of that. And then I'm also going to go ahead and get rid of, you know, the inside here. So I'll select kind of the outside. Oops. I want this guy. There we go. And I'm just going to make sure I don't want them to be attached. So I'm going to do something like that. And then I'll delete hidden. And then from here, all you have to do is extrude polygroup all. Do that for the other one. And now you have stuff that sits on the inside like that. And now we can subdivide this a little bit if we want. Go ahead and inflate it. I'll give them a little bit of thicker gums here. That way we know where our gums will be sitting. You can see that now that we kind of have an idea of where our gums will be, we can kind of start adjusting where the teeth and stuff will go. Gums will sit more on the inside. There's going to be some more like areas of, you know, gaps and spaces between what is, you know, bone and where the gums are versus what the skin is and like the overlap. So we can bring this stuff in a little bit more. And have it follow basically where you would think the skull would be, right? Because that's what the gums are, is they're tissue that sits directly on top of our skull. And then from here we can make sure that our teeth kind of sit properly in there. Doesn't have to be perfect. Once you're doing crazy anatomical things, you really don't have to go too crazy with this, but it is nice to know that you know, your gums are going to be sitting in the proper spot. So now I'll keep the, so I'm going to go ahead and duplicate this, and I'll make these smaller. Because this has a decent amount of geometry for being as small it is, we don't have to keep this kind of geometry. I can easily go into here and just pick another cylinder or something like that. We can change the subdivision level slightly to maybe have something like that. And now we can lengthen these. I like to just round out the bottoms here. And then we can kind of move them out. There we go. And then we can plug that in. So one thing to note when you look at skulls and jaws, and I think I have an example in the reference here. So if we look at the way this is structured, which is a saber tooth, right? So we have the teeth, and then you can see we have this gap right here. And then usually the top teeth will be about 6. I think it's 6 usually, front canines here. Well, it's not really canines, but front teeth here. And then this gap is actually where the bottom larger fangs here will actually, collapse in and overlap right there. So the lower jaw's fangs will always be on the inside of upper jaw fangs, and that's pretty true for most canines or felines when you look at the skull anatomy there. So you want to make sure you can leave that gap, and I'm going to do 1, 2, 3. And then I can move, once I have, 6, I can kind of use move topological and kind of start placing these. And I like to use the inflate tool to kind of, if you have gaps within your teeth, it'll always look kind of scarier. But now I can use the move tool and I can start to kind of flatten these out a bit. And then you can use the smooth tool and start kind of shaping these teeth a little bit. Also follow in line with the curvature of the mouth, So you can start kind of curling these a little bit. Give them a bit more space. And they'll always look teeth will always be a little funky until you really start getting the shapes in there. You don't want them to look buck-toothed either. And then also what will help is embedding and getting those gums to feel and fit properly, so it feels like there's actually a spot for these teeth to go. Even something as simple as that will start getting it to feel a bit more real and feel like they're actually being embedded into the gums there. And then for the bottom teeth, it's just as easy as I can duplicate this and say, okay. Oh no, did I just delete it instead of duplicating it? Oh wait, no. Are they there? Oh no! Those are teeth I'm not getting back, guys. Once you delete it, it's gone forever. There is no Control-Z on that. I really did just delete them. Oh, I'm so sad. Now I have to do it again. Good old ZBrush. Killing me, ZBrush. I'm just gonna throw in the lower teeth. I gotta, there's a part, so when I lose work, I feel like I just have to go do something else for a quick second. I'm like, oh, I'm just so upset that, you lose your work or whatever it is that you do. So annoying, but it is what it is. I'll work on the bottom teeth first, or, something, and get myself out of the, oh, I gotta do it again. If I repeat the same thing again, I usually go a little crazy, which is okay, but to note, so the bottom teeth, don't have that gap between the canines because there's no reason to. And then it's usually 4 across. So it's usually 4 on the bottom like that. But yeah, it's usually, I think, 6 at the top, 4 at the bottom. Canines go between the 2. And this technically is also now 6, right? So now I can just duplicate this. And I'll actually duplicate it, which is great. And I'll just flip that around. And go ahead and position that up there. Yeah, I don't know. Did I get a quick save of that? I don't think I did. Someone's like, oh, maybe check the quick save. But I think my last quick save was when it crashed, probably the last stream that I had. It's okay. We have teeth again. It's fine. Thank you guys, though. I appreciate your support. And ZBrush is very annoying with that stuff. But it's all good. Most of the time, it's great about saving your work or, you know, doing stuff like that. I've had power outages and somehow it saves. I mean, ZBrush is pretty impressive when it comes to saving your work by itself, but it's gonna happen. It's okay. We're back with teeth. It's all good. They're fixed. Yeah, well, what I think is actually dangerous about ZBrush's interface, which is good for people to know, is duplicate and delete are the same size. They both start with a D, and they sit right next to each other. So if you're not carefully looking like I did, you can easily just delete rather than duplicate. So if ZBrush was listening and was going to fix something, I would say delete should be somewhere a little easier to not accidentally hit if you're trying to duplicate. I'm trying to make more of the thing I made, not delete the thing I made. So placement of it is detrimental more than anything else. But it's all good. Teeth were easy enough to make, but there are moments where, and I'm really bad at usually saving. So I usually pay for that sometimes, where I'll work on this whole thing and make all this stuff and then it crashes. Or I'll accidentally delete something, you know, and yeah, you lose all your work. So not a fun day, but it's okay. I'm gonna make sure this is kind of sticking out too, so that when he closes his mouth, it should feel like these things all kind of form together. I'm gonna squish these up a little bit too. Yeah, we have something like that. And these could probably hide up more into the up into the skull. Because really what the ultimate test will be, you know, the idea is we shouldn't be able to really see them from when, if he's kind of like relaxing. If you look at big cats when they have their mouth open, you can see the bottoms more than you can see the top of the teeth. So, you know, making sure that this feels embedded in there will be good. And the biggest reason it's to that is, you know, we want enough of that space too to be able to eventually we can lift up his, you know, jowls and his mouth, and he should feel like he should be able to snarl. Now, obviously, there's tons of stuff wrong with that in particular because we don't have enough gums, you know, to shoot up and show, and that looks pretty terrifying. Or maybe this is what your dog looks like when he sticks out his head out the window. But yeah, we want to just make sure that all that stuff is feeling pretty good. This is also where we could probably start getting into some colors or some poly paint, right? So deserts are interesting, and they have some pretty interesting reds. I really like the pangolin colors in this ref. This is pretty cool. So maybe we can try to do something like that. And also, if we do any sort of other yellows and browns, he might end up looking a little too sand slashy. So we'll see. But I'm gonna go ahead to go to. I like the skin shader for poly painting, especially for like all organic stuff. Go ahead and throw on that material RGB. And I'm gonna pick kind of these darker. His face is pretty dark in that reference. It's almost like grayish. We can fill that in. We can do the same to the rest of the body if we want to for now. Fill in his claws. So I like to just kind of fill in everything. This isn't our final, so I'll probably poly paint our final scales first before really adding any sort of color. But the idea would be these would be pretty close, and then I really like the bright colors at the very ends and the tips, but we're not going to worry about that too much for right now. Make them more, maybe a little more reddish or something. Coffee break. Maybe his plating can be the most saturated, possibly. There's a lot of different ways to play with color breakup on animals, or on anything really. Like big value changes are an obvious one, you know, having something be darker versus something be lighter, but to also give breakup, you can easily make something, you know, slightly more saturated than the other thing, but they'll have the same value, and the thing that's saturated will pop out, even if the value is the same, you know, so you can kind of play with that type of stuff as well. For the paintbrush, I like to turn on this square brush and change the focal shift so I get kind of like a harder edge when poly painting. I'll just play with maybe having like a light undertone or something that I can also transfer into the body. So I like to start getting an idea of some poly paint fairly early on into the sculpt, usually, just because it helps me kind of bring out the character and try to figure out more about this, who this creature is or what they do and things like that. Just kind of starts bringing it more to life, especially when you start adding some eyes into the mix and stuff. And maybe darken back a bit more. And this doesn't have to be, you know, this really crazy intense poly paint. Again, I'm brushing over it pretty fast. And just getting a basic idea. Hello, Jose Silva from YouTube. Yeah, just getting a real basic block in just can help kind of fill out the creature and help you just kind of see it a little better for what it's going to be. Grayscale is still important to sculpt in. Definitely don't get me wrong there. He is a kind of brightish pinkish nose. We can always play with these colors, but again, color is all about context. So until you put it down there, you won't really be able to tell if it's working or not. And then we can, you know, never make your teeth full white, you know, especially if your character has a darker color palette. We don't need to go full white. It just will look, I mean, he'll have really shiny teeth and, you know, I don't know, use mouthwash, but, you know, most creatures, you want to kind of stay within a range. Because again, with context, it's still the brightest thing, you know, that you see on him. But it's nowhere near white, and we don't even need to go to 50. We could even keep it a little lower and it would still look like the brightest thing. So keep that in mind. Again, color context and color theory is important to think about when you're thinking about that type of stuff. You very rarely, if ever, quite honestly, unless you're doing something that's very stylized like noir or something, you'll very rarely use the full color spectrum or the full value range, you know. Maybe at first to block in your composition, you'll use, you know, white and black, but when it comes to painting and stuff, you're going to be working within, you know, a gamut of a range. And it's going to make your stuff feel a lot more cohesive. And maybe later on we can add some, you know, I'm thinking maybe we can add some cool like striation or patterning that kind of replicates throughout his little character. You know, maybe he's got like these kind of, I'm thinking maybe like you know, like in how an Okapi has these cool little like striation like patterns, like these kind of stripe patterns. We could do something like that. You know, if it's pangolin or maybe something that's like referencing kind of like a tiger or something, we can have something that kind of feels like that, just to give it some more visual interest. Could be kind of fun. I'll leave it there as like an idea for now, and we'll see where that goes. So I think the biggest thing now, or the most important thing for me personally, everything's brought up to a decent place except for the block in of his scales. So let's go ahead and make our more final version, and then I'll show you how I'm going to basically replace what I made with the final ones. We could go back and, you know, from our last stream, you saw how quickly I could place these things, but now that these are all there, you kind of want to utilize what's there. And then just kind of make adjustments after that. So yeah, we'll see what we can do there. But for now, let's go ahead and make the final one. So I have the one that I did use before. I'm just going to scale it up so we can see it a little easier. And solo it. And then remember, I didn't mirror and weld it before. So this shape is not a bad shape. If we're looking at our reference here, this is a close-up shot of pangolin armor, which is super cool. So the way it overlaps and like these striations, and again, the coloration of this is really cool. And we can go ahead and put that into our insert mesh. So we're going to try to make a more topology friendly. I'm just trying to get a more evened out topology here. Kind of grid it out. Now, one thing that we learned is tilt this back. We could probably thin out the top a bit more. Oops, I wasn't on symmetry, was I? Or I was in. I'm gonna thin out the top a bit more. Why is that being so funky? So weird though when I was pulling from the. Okay, maybe I'm crazy. I don't know. We'll see. Ooh, I've got some cool chill beats and some rain to sell it. It's starting to rain pretty hard here. I don't know if you guys can pick that up on the mic. Hopefully not, but we'll see. You guys get to hear chill rain if you do, so. I'm gonna round this out a bit more. Now the cool part about this is we can actually do, again, because we're using Nanomesh, we should be able to easily, we can actually colorize this later if we wanted to, or add subdivisions later and sculpt on it, depending on, you know, what we want to do. We can change the shape later as well. So we just want like a basic rough in of what this could be. I think what could help is I'm going to grab this edge loop and go ahead and polygroup it, and then I can grab and polygroup these as well. Because I want it to remain fairly tight, and then of course I want it to also be up here at the top. And if you polygroup it, it'll retain the polygroup when you turn into a nanomesh. So if I crease that, now we have something a little sharper to deal with. And then I can do the same on the bottom here. There we go. So now we have something nice and sharp to work with. And to start with, I think before I go in and do crazy detailing on it, let's go ahead and place it, and then we can make some adjustments after to make sure that they all sit kind of properly. And we can see if we need to make, you know, multiple kinds. You know, maybe the smaller ones need to be squishier, need to separate into like a different group or something like that. So let's see what we can do. So I have a couple ideas. Part of me, we'll do this method first, and we'll see how it goes. Because we have this one long plane that goes down the back. So using Nanomesh can be really handy because you can work with one plane or one type of plane, and then you can kind of build out from there, and you can edit it. It's very editable. So actually what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and hide that. And I don't need whatever this, oh, well, I guess I need it because I like it to name it, but I'm going to pull it down here. Oh no, ZBrush, no crashing. No crashing ZBrush, oh, it might crash. What do I do? I just move the cylinder? It doesn't like that I move cylinders? I'll wait for a second and I can close it. It'll probably recover my work and save. ZBrush is giving me all sorts of issues today. Boo, ZBrush. See what happened. There goes ZBrush. Let's pop it back open. Hopefully it quick saved. I don't know. Those ones are risky. Oh no. You guys. I don't see it in here. I don't know what that is. I don't think that's it though. That sucks. Sad face. I'll just have to redo all that lovely work at some point. That's annoying. Well, I'm not going to worry about it right now. I will have to do all the things that I just did again later on some other stream or not on stream, but on my own time. And that is totally fine. For now, we'll just continue like as if we finish the face and doing all that good jazz, and then I'll just continue. I'll just make the armor, so you guys don't have to. I'm not gonna have you guys rewatch all that work. That'd be silly. So we'll just continue on. Go ahead and hide that. Oh, ZBrush! Apparently, don't move that damn cylinder out of the way. Oh man, that's definitely annoying. All the things that I do not like to do I really am not a fan of redoing work. But, oh well. We're just gonna kind of try to keep moving on. Good old ZBrush. It's a hard one because ZBrush is usually pretty good at saving, and so I don't get into the habit actually of saving my work that often, which is probably a terrible habit. ZBrush really didn't like me moving that cylinder, but that's okay. Not a fan. It just wigged out for no reason. Oh well, it happens. That's what happens when you work in programs. But yeah, definitely still keep a good habit of, you know, saving your work. I personally am actually usually pretty bad at it because usually ZBrush is really good about quick saving in here, so just was not a fan today, but that's okay. So I have a little pangolin. Usually the second time around is always faster anyway. Like I could get that done pretty quickly and move on and we'll all be happy. Cool. So we have our nanomesh that we can work on, and then I'm going to go ahead and take our body and I'm going to duplicate it. And then I want to merge all these are all separate parts, so I'm going to merge them together now because I'm just going to take certain sections of this in order to get a ZRemesher that I feel like will work on scaling out the scales. And because one thing that I was thinking about that makes the pangolin armor a little weirder to do is that there's these slight offsets, right? So, and I'll show you what happens normally in Nanomesh when we're trying to get something like this. So it'll be I think this will be a more helpful thing to show you guys how I would approach trying to get that offset. So now we have this merge group, and it doesn't have to be this high res. We can even dwindle that down even farther because we're just trying to get the base of where this stuff is going to sit. And now what I will probably do is I'll use the slice curve so I can get really clean cuts. We want some of this shoulder to go up and around. So I'll start there. I'll go ahead and cut this way. And then we can go ahead and cut long ways all the way along his back. There you go. And then I think for me, I want a little bit more here. So I'm going to go ahead and grab that. Right, so we're just trying to get the overall shape of there you go, something like that. YouTube is saying at least ZBrush is not joking about the crash of 5 years ago. I got an error in Max and said nothing to do. Yeah, Maya or 3ds Max sometimes can be really bad about your saves. Maya's one that if I'm in it, I save every second of my work because you just never know. Never know when it's gonna crash. Also here, I don't need this part, so I can use a slice curve and go ahead and cut that off. I'm not crazy. There we go. And then I'll do a mirror and mirror and weld, and then I can grab that piece and go ahead and delete hidden. So there we go. Now we have something where that's gonna sit properly on top of our model, because that's kind of where, if you look, that's where I want all these Nice little armor plates to go. So now I'm going to go ahead and I don't know if I necessarily really need to keep groups. The lines are really clean, so it should give me a pretty good loop that goes around the edge. So I'll go ahead and just ZRemesh it and see what I get. Ooh, we get some really pretty stuff up here. Why this turns into that, I will never know. We'll keep groups and see what happens. There we go. That's something kind of nicer. And then I'm going to smooth out. Part of ZRemesher is also trying to figure out, you know, these little forms that are still there. So with a mesh like this, we don't need that. So I'm going to try to smooth out a lot of that too, so we can kind of mitigate as much weird choices that ZRemesher tries to make. You know, all this seems totally fine. We're going to go ahead and have it. And have it again. Cool. That's getting there. Maybe one more time. Oh yeah, that's getting there. That's pretty low. That's looking good. So one thing that I do want for the ZRemesh is I actually don't want... I think this is pretty good. I think this will give me some cool stuff. So now one thing to keep in mind is ZRemesher, obviously, or not ZRemesher, Nanomesh will give you a nanomesh per polygroup, right? But we want a midline, so obviously we can just get rid of the middle, and now we'll have something on either side. But we'll do that. So go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go ahead. Anything that doesn't kind of cut off into like a nice ring, I'll cut off. So like an edge loop. Basically, I'm looking for things like this. I want a loop. I don't want... Yeah, I want stuff like that to happen. If I select that, I want that. Cool. So, we can move this around later once we get the stuff going. But what I'm going to try to do now is I'm going to try to polygroup it in a way where it's going to be every other ring. And the reason why is because I need to be able to offset the nanomesh. I can polygroup that one little triangle later. I'm just going to select every other one here. And if this becomes too many, I can edit. The nice part about Nanomesh is I'll be able to edit this mesh on the fly. And you might have to rearrange your polygroups if you do that a little bit. So, oops, I missed one. Ooh, that's annoying, isn't it? There we go. This is the exciting part, guys. Cool. Now we have every other one, so I can go ahead and polygroup that. And then I can go in here and go to polygroup and shift select and select that little guy. I could, you know, weld that down or do whatever, but we'll see what it does, and I think it should be fine. I'm also going to just delete this, because if I need extra ones or whatever, I'm not worried about having that extra little polygon. I think that'll be fine. I'm going to go ahead and make sure that's a polygroup. So I want this to have... There we go, right? And then, oops, I'm going to go ahead and pick these ones as well to have polygroups. So it's kind of just like a striped thing right now. Cool. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and go to here. We can say create insert mesh. We can say new. Now it's an insert mesh. And then from there, with that selected, we can say create a nanomesh brush. And there you go. So now it's a nanomesh brush. So now what I want to do is I can go to my, that dude, this guy. Hide that. So I'm going to go to this dude, and I'm going to make sure, so when you go to nanomesh, you can have multiple nanomeshes while on top of one mesh. In things called, they store them in indexes. So what I can do is I can go ahead and say insert nanomesh and do polygroup all. So now when I drag this out, I'm only going to get it on that purple polygroup, right? And then what I can do is I can do it again onto this one. And now you'll see I have two indexes. So I have index 1 and I have index 2, and those are driving the two separate polygroups that I did. Now, to start, I like to just see where this gets me first before adding the second index, because I can always add it later. I'm going to go ahead and make my adjustments to this first, and then I can add the other one. And hopefully working on this one will make working on the second one a little easier. So I'm going to go ahead and try to do, so proportional will keep it all the same size. It'll keep it proportional regardless of the size of the face that it's being drawn on. Whereas fit will actually fit the mesh into the size polygroup. And fit and fill can kind of do the same thing. It's a very, I think it has to do with one will kind of change the proportion of it a little bit more. There's a slight difference, but there's not a huge one. And then clip border means if this size gets bigger than a certain thing, you'll see that it'll start clipping. But we don't want that. So we can change the size here. And then this is where we can go in and make sure, one, that our mesh is facing the right direction. You can see that these are not all facing the right direction. Usually, if you go to alignment and you say align to normal, you'll usually get something that's pretty good. But a lot of my experience as well is that not working so well. We're going to go ahead and try fit. We're going to scale this up. Can up the length a little bit. Now the biggest issue with this is you can see that the reason why this looks crazy and doesn't work as well is because of the size of these polygons. So proportional might be the thing that works out better for us to start, and then maybe we can scale these down. But we're going to go ahead and, or you can put them into multiple indexes. That actually might be more of the solve, right? So if you're looking for different sizing, so for example, we want the top to be sized differently than the sides and things like that, you might just want to split these off into some different meshes to be able to control that a lot easier. So we can try that, as well as if we take this, turn off Nanomesh. Let me go ahead and grab this middle edge, because the middle, I want it to be a lot bigger than the other sides and things. And if we just go ahead and split hidden, now we have that. And we have no Nanomesh yet, so we can drag on this Nanomesh. And we can then go over to our other guy. We can drag on this Nanomesh, which looks like it stored this Nanomesh state. So we can keep these both on. So I'm going to go ahead and turn off everything else except our two Nanomeshes here. We'll start with the midline, because it will be probably the easiest one to start with. So if I say align to normal, it seems like oh my goodness. ZBrush just does not like me today. Although this one should quick save. This one looked like it quick saved. Why? Why are you being so mean today? Maybe it's just teaching me a lesson to save. Jeebus. I just pushed a button, ZBrush. I'm sorry. It's mad that I haven't updated. That's probably why. Okay, anyway. So you see, if we align to normal, it looks like they're all actually facing the correct direction, in the sense that they're all facing the same direction, but you can see that they're facing the wrong way as far as where we want the plates to go. So we can go to Nanomesh and we can just make sure that in our rotation, we can rotate this 180 degrees, and we can just plug that number in. And you can see now they'll rotate in the same direction. And then we can also give it a X direction. And you'll see that they are still kind of facing in the wrong direction. So we have most of them facing the right direction, right? And then we have some of them facing not so right direction. And an easy way to do that, to handle that, is you can hover over this and you can say spin edges. And if you go ahead and click that, or is it just spin? Oh, can you not have, you might have to turn off align to normal for it to work. Ah, you do. That's very annoying. So just make sure you can, you should be able to spin, turn off insert edge, because that's going to be annoying. Nothing. So you can spin these to make sure that they're all facing the right direction. I know it's annoying, but there's not usually a giant workaround for this. But this is the way you can get things to spin and face the right direction. And I'm just making sure they're all facing the right direction. I can go back in and rotate them again to make sure that they all get spun around. Right, because the pointy part is the part that's going to go back down. So we can just say 0, and now they're all aligned properly. And this is also where if you say fit, this is what can be helpful, is we can adjust the width, and we'll go ahead and adjust the length. Yeah, there we go. So now we adjust the length a little bit here. You can adjust that width. So proportional is cool because this is the thing that will allow you to go from like big to small. So if I want, you know, bigger ones up here in the front, I can just move or slide these edge loops around. So if I turn this off for a second, you want to be careful about deleting edges. You can always readjust the polygons, but there's a lot of stuff that you'd have to. But if I go ahead and just slide these, so let's see. I can start from maybe back here. So if I slide these around, I can make this one smaller, smaller, a little bigger, bigger. Right, if I turn that back on, that one's doing some funky things. There we go. You can see I'll get small, medium, and then like bigger, right? So that's pretty, you get some pretty nice control there. And you can see, you can do it live too. You can see how that's going to be affecting the Nanomesh itself. So you can slide these up and turn this on. I've spin it, do nothing. There we go. And then I can adjust. So now I can slide these around. And you can kind of adjust on the fly. But what's nice about it is obviously, you know, I'm not changing the geometry, and I don't have to move individual geometry points yet. I'm just kind of shifting single plane, which is the part that's kind of really handy with this. I can change the length a little bit. And you can see that some of it gets really crazy, but it is kind of cool. You just kind of have to dial in how big you want these things, and then adjusting that length of each one. You know, and finding the right. This one's a little annoying to try to find where the Nanomesh is hiding them, but yeah, there you go. So you get something kind of cool. And then now I want to talk about, you know, adding basically the overlap on the top of this, right? And if this is getting too wide or whatever it is, just because this is getting wider. So you can easily, if I go ahead and turn on symmetry, if I make this section wider here, I'm just doing this very quickly. And you make sure that this all tapers out correctly. So the annoying part about it is working on the Nanomesh to kind of get the geometry right. But once you get it right, a lot of control comes into your hands to be able to move this stuff around. It's way easier to do this and be able to edit on the fly than working with a bunch of pieces of Geo at the moment. So yeah, now you get something that looks like that. So this is remember, this is only utilizing the red, I believe. Yeah, I just want to make sure it's the red. So now what I can do is go back to my Nanomesh brush. And I can say polygroup all. I can go ahead and drag that out. And you can see it's a square. It didn't store our Nanomesh, and that's totally fine. If it does do that, you can go back to your little dude here. And the easiest way for me sometimes is to go to insert, bring it into a new tool. And there it is, in a new tool, and it's selected. And then you can go back up into here and go to your Nanomesh where that cube is. And if you go to brush, boop, you can go to modifiers. You can actually pick it. So now I can pick it, and at first it doesn't look like it does anything, but you can just re-update it. And there you go. There it is. Cool. So now we have this one. And what I can do is you can go back to your Nanomesh, and now you have an index. So you have the first one that we adjusted, which you can copy, and then you can go to the new one. You can paste it and see what that gives you. But remember, we had to go in and spin all the edges. It's very annoying. Well, let's align to normal and see if we get something okay. Short edge, long edge. Sometimes one of them will help you. And we can hide the other one. That almost did it, but we can hide it. It's annoying that when this is on, you can't seem to rotate it. That didn't used to seem to be the case. I used to be able to align normal, and then I should be able to spin that just the one edge. Oh, it is doing it now. Is it doing it? No, it doesn't want to do it. Very obnoxious. ZBrush wants to give me all sorts of problems. Preach it in the comments if ZBrush just loves giving you issues some days too. I feel like it's telling me to not be on the computer. Maybe that's what it's telling you to do. Take a break, grab some paper and pen, something that won't crash on you. Get a nice cup of hot chocolate and just chill out for the day. I think that's what it's trying to tell me. So again, just trying to spin this all into the right direction. But you can see probably what I'm getting at is the issue with Nanomesh is that you're working from topology, right? So now we have all these spun the right way. And then we can just rotate this 180. We can up the size, and if I unhide others, you can see we're not getting the offset, right? So that's where we can you can do a couple cool things. You can tile it too, so I can actually split this off into two, right? But then I can also go ahead and use an offset as well. Oops. Which way are we going? X. Yeah, so I could offset it like this. And if you're having trouble with, actually it doesn't, I'm wondering if it can mirror, because that would be kind of cool if it was if it could offset it, but do it based on the mirroring, but it might not be able to. But again, that's not really a big deal. You can just get rid of the tile and have it be on one side and then just mirror weld it later. Or you don't have to tile it and you can just insert an edge loop, you know? But remember that if you insert an edge loop here, and I'll just show you, if you insert an edge loop now into here, it will also split the second one. So you can get really crazy with how the Nanomesh can work. But you can see that we can use tiling to get 2 of the other side. Whoops. And then just offset this to 0. And then we could even rotate. It is a shame that it's not going to do it on the mirror. That would be kind of cool, wouldn't it? Gotta talk to ZBrush and tell them to do that. But yeah, I'm just going to offset it, and then we can rotate this and use maybe the Y rotation. You got to be careful with the fill, how crazy your proportions get. But now you can see that we're kind of starting to get something that is offset in the right way. That's getting there. And you'll get something that's really, really clean, right? I think that's why I like to use this. I know it seems like a pain, but partially it's a pain because ZBrush just doesn't like me today more than anything else, which is definitely obnoxious today, but that's okay. But you can make these slight rotations and start getting something that feels good to you. And then making, you know, minor adjustments on the geometry to get something. And it seemed like the length was being really funky, so we can just offset this off a little bit. That's getting better. Change the width down maybe. Yeah, so you can start to get something like that. And again, for ultimate control, you could split up all these different edges and whatnot, and that would make your life also a lot easier. But what's nice is you can have them in one thing, and you can just sort it in index if you want to. So that's always a really nice little thing that you can do. And then again, we can, instead of spinning edges, we can slide those edges. Well, I'm going to say do nothing because I don't want that to do anything. And then instead of inserting, I'm going to say slide. Where's slide? I can't read. Am I crazy? I'm not crazy. I think it keeps accidentally hovering and over. There it is. So yeah, now I can slide these and start finding. See, the reason why you'll get kind of like weird ones in weird areas is because they're not proportionally even. And that's when you can start bringing this down and kind of adjusting the size so that way they feel, you know, more natural. Right, so you can adjust how big these things are getting, or the fact that maybe they get smaller and smaller. Once you have that stuff set up, it's really, it isn't as big of a pain. Okay, there you go. Now you can get something that goes from small to really big, and then we can easily make this go all the way down to really, really small. And again, the reason why you're getting a lot of length here is it just has to do with the topology itself, right? So it's really important most time, like if you're going to use fit and not just proportional, if you're going to use fit, let me hide this Nanomesh for a second. It's really important that all of these try to be as square as possible before getting into that. So what I would probably personally do is the lower the better, because if you have something really, really low res, you can always tile it to have it be more by using the tile V, right? So I can tile this. Look at I can tile this a bunch of times if I want to, right? Let me go back to the other index if I tile it, right? So you can tile this a bunch of times. So you can always have one polygon represent more, but you can't have one polygon represent less. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So that's where you could easily split this into even lower sections and then have it dictate a bit more. Now the difference is, you know, you're not going to have as much control if I tile this just one more time, for example, and then I use slide edge here. These will be the same size, right? So that's something to think about as well. But yeah, it is a very, very handy little tool to be able to do. So now that we have that, we can go ahead and select this guy, and we'll see what this gives me. Maybe this will be nice, maybe it won't. It's hard to tell right now how nice ZBrush wants to be. We can go ahead and rotate these back, and these look pretty good so far. This looks like it's being fairly friendly, except for maybe here. Rotate those guys, and then we can. This is kind of what I was talking about. Was it would be? Oh, the mirroring is being weird now. That's lovely. But this is what I was talking about, where it'd be kind of cool, you know, if he's feeling threatened or whatever it is, the character would basically puff these out, you know, to be bigger. And then when he's maybe running or something, they kind of stay a little flatter. You could do something where maybe they, you know, he would like jitter them or make them shiny. So it's a way of maybe, I don't know, communicating with his other members of the pack, if he's a pack animal or something like that. It'd be kind of fun. So yeah, and then again, you can also do fit if you want. I think proportional for this is fine. And just make them maybe a little bigger. I mean, fit is the better option because it will make these ones smaller and then go bigger. But yeah, you can see that here, if I go to ZModeler and I start sliding this stuff around, you'll start getting more evened out topology. There is it might work okay. It's called equalize. So equalize will try to take all the polygons, and if you drag it, it'll try to equalize. I said polygroup all, didn't I? If you do all polygons and you try to do an equalize, see, it'll try to start making them the same size. Which might help you a little bit. It starts getting a little funky in some areas, but that might be a way to help you kind of, again, equalize some of this stuff. And then it seems like anytime I want to make a change, it just wants to be mean to me. But yeah, we can do something like that. And then of course adding either more topology, or we can literally go in here and use the move tool to like move all this stuff up and change the size of these. And then we can go into insert nanomesh and say polygroup all. We can drag out our other little dudes here. We can say fit or fill. Right, and then we can adjust the direction of these dudes as well. Oops, it's kind of that way. And there we go, and then we can rotate these guys out. And then it's a matter of just making sure that they're all It's annoying, it is, spinning these edges. But you will get something very, once you do all this, you get something that's very editable, which is what I do like about this process. This process is the most tedious part of this, but once you get everything in there, it is really, really controllable. And then, like I said, the other issue with this was, you know, these are all kind of laying on top of one another, but that's where that offset can come into play. You can just offset this a little bit, right? You can offset a little bit on one and then go back to your other index and offset it the other direction a little bit so you don't get super crazy offset. And then you can get something that actually will kind of offset in the right way. If I size these up a bit more. Right, and the biggest thing about this is, one, I like to I'll make sure the size is really small first and look at where all these things are facing and make sure they're facing all the right directions, because the moment you scale it up and start switching this stuff, it kind of becomes a hot mess if these aren't facing the right directions properly. But it's not too bad to go in here and just, whoops, switch these. It's kind of fun, actually. I actually don't mind this part, because then in the end, it's really satisfying to watch it move properly and stuff. That one's going to be weird, and we can always delete it later. And say hide others for now as well, if it's getting too messy for you. And this is one of those things where you can go in and say, okay, you know, if these are all facing the wrong direction, it's as easy enough to go here and say to flip them 180 and then just fix the ones that aren't, you know. So pick the ones that are, you know, going to be least time consuming or whatever it is. But these aren't too bad. And it's okay. Today is a day of reminding it's okay to have a bad ZBrush day. ZBrush does not want to cooperate with me today, and I'm just going to say, okay, it's fine. And there you go. That's looking a little better. You can go back to our other index and hide the other ones, and then make sure that these are all facing the right direction. And again, it's easier to make the size smaller and then maybe offset. Let's see. Can maybe lengthen it. There you go. Just to make sure that we can see where the length is going on all these. Oh, and I said align to normal. So if you make the length a lot longer, it's easier to see which way they're, you know, spinning. And I'm gonna save. Because I apparently don't learn from my mistakes. That's how that works. And save that. And just keep spinning these guys. I mean, the spinning thing is also helpful. Like if you do have something that what you want to randomize, you know, which direction they face, this type of tool is useful just in general. There we go. But yeah, you can just get them all spinning the right direction. Right? Cool. We'll rotate them down a little bit more. We'll unhide the other ones. We can maybe fill these out a bit more. Go into the other index. This one's not spun in the right direction. I don't think this one is either. There we go. The biggest thing to make sure that these feel like they're in setting is going to be this X rotation to make sure that they sit in within the thing. The other thing too is if they're too embedded, it might feel like it's going to be hard to get them to overlap properly. So that's where you can kind of offset basically the depth in which this is offsetting on. So I can change that, and I can also change it on the other one. So I can bring this. It's a very finicky little slider. And then again, I would spend a decent amount of time. You can also do an invert sliding as well. Hi, Alicia from Discord. We're painstakingly getting through this, guys. But yeah, you can start adjusting some of this stuff, because one of the reasons why you get a lot of issues is, again, it's all about that even topology. So if I start sliding this stuff to feel a bit more even, that will help a lot. You can, and I would do that. I would recommend doing this before kind of setting up a lot of stuff, but you can insert an edge loop. You should be able to do it pretty easily, actually. If this is getting too wide and there's not enough, you can insert an edge loop, and it should be able to just update that, right? So where you insert an edge loop, I can do it with it on. It'll divide it again. So if you need more topology in a certain area, or maybe this needs to get split into two, you can easily split that. I think this is fine as one, because I kind of wanted the tail to do that. And then also, this is where you can slide this. Oops. You can start making these, you can start moving these in and making them a lot smaller down here and start adjusting that stuff. It's good to turn on both. And I'm focusing on the one side for right now. This music is so peaceful for how angry I am on the inside at ZBrush today. Maybe we can flare these out a bit, right? Like that could be kind of cool to offset. And once you find like a setting that's working for you, so now that let's say like this setting does make me happy, this is now, keep that setting, because if it's working for most of this, that means also just ignore the other side. We just mirrored weld it. Now it's just a matter of laying this stuff out, and kind of shifting and moving this stuff around to get it to look how we want it. And then going back and forth from one index to the other to make sure that we can kind of get that overlap. But there you go. That's starting to look better. We're getting there, guys. And then instead of spin edges, just have it do nothing, and then it'll be easier to. If you make sure that verts, you can either have vert sliding on or edge sliding on, we can start adjusting this stuff. Making that a lot smaller. And as we start getting this proportionally feeling in the right place, you can see that a lot of it will start to kind of work itself out. It'll just kind of look like a bit of a mess for a while until you get it to that spot that's looking and feeling good. But yeah, you can see that here is looking good, and all of this is getting there, except for a few weird spun edges. Again, easy to fix. And then there's certain things like this where, you know, maybe it'll look better that way for now. Then we can unhide it and take a look at it. So that's feeling pretty good. And then again, you're gonna just have to ignore this side. Nanomesh used to be better about, I feel like it really did used to be better about this stuff, but we can just hide that. You can even delete it for now if it's too much, and we can look at that from just on one side of our character. Go ahead and hide that one. And then again, what's nice is like this is super embedded in there, right? But we can turn on symmetry, and I can just use the move tool to move this stuff out. And I'm just moving the plane, really. And then that's when I can kind of, you can easily like adjust curvatures and things like that. So that's pretty handy. You can kind of move this in and out or up and around. You can squish this, right? So adjusting this stuff is, you know, you can see how, even with the move tool, you can easily kind of work around how big or small you want some stuff to get. So if this gets really big, you know, we can have this stretch out and get really big and then turns down. Also, if the plane is getting in your way, you can just hide it. You can say show instances, or sorry, show placement, and it'll hide the plane that you're placing it on. And now it's almost like you're just strictly moving plates around. So, you know, I can do that with this guy too. I can say don't show placement, and now I can see how this stuff is actually kind of lining up and looking. Now, if you duplicate this and do a mirror, yeah. So you can't duplicate the Nanomesh and mirror it, but you can, once you're happy with what that result is, you can mirror and weld it, but it changes the vert direction for some reason. I felt like it used to be better about it, but now it's not. But if you wanted to see what this looks like on the other side, so I duplicated it. So I have my working nav mesh or nanomesh, and then you can just go down to here and say one to mesh, and now I can do a mirror, and I can kind of see what that's gonna look like. Note. Oh, it looks like it messed up my thing. That's weird, actually. Oh, so it'll still keep certain indexes, so you have to like hide the indexes, but there you go. So then you can do that, and then you can duplicate it again and then show and then you can add the other one. This doesn't have the full thing, so you can take this one, duplicate it, go to index 1, and then say one to mesh, turn off nanomesh, and then mirror that side, and now you'll get the other part too. But the one thing that I wanted to show with this that I thought was cool was before you turn it into, a real mesh, because now we would have to like go in here and we could hand paint it and do all that stuff, which is fine, but I'm gonna go ahead and delete this. I'm gonna delete that. I have my nav mesh or nanomesh. I keep saying nav mesh accidentally. So let's say we're happy with the placement of this stuff as we move it around and do all that jazz. There is one spun edge. I gotta fix it, guys. It's bugging me. There we go. Okay. So now that we have something like this, what's actually kind of cool is if we want to edit that mesh that it's using, all we have to do is say edit mesh, and it'll do this really weird, crazy split screen. Is this split screen helpful at all? No, because it's not like I can't move this side and not move this side. They move together, which is really annoying. But it will show you the split view, so you can look at something like this and look at your mesh. But now what I'm going to do is you can subdivide this if you wanted to, and you can see that it's updating only on the one index. But I can even go into Polypaint. I can fill this object. I'll turn on all the Polypaint for. Oh, that's right. It deleted my Polypaint because ZBrush doesn't like me because it didn't save. But so I can go ahead and do that, and then I can go to PPA, and I can pick something lighter. I can go in here and paint that, and it will update, which is pretty cool. So if I add more topology, you can see that it's updating on the fly. And the Polypaint will transfer over when it's done. It's a little laggy, obviously, because there's a lot of geometry that's trying to update at once, but it's still just an instance, so it won't become really heavy until you say okay to this. But yeah, you can go in here and adjust this final one. It's kind of like a weird duplicate of what you have, and then when you're done, you can just unclick out of Edit Mesh, and there you go. Now you have a nice detailed thing that you can still control using Nanomesh. So I can go in here and use the Move tool and move this around and all that stuff, and it'll still act like a Nanomesh. So when once your stuff is all placed nicely, you can go in and detail, just one, and then it will populate it. And the nice part about the index thing that I actually do kind of like is you can basically make different types of plates for each one. So if I go to the next one, I say edit, I can subdivide this one, and I can change the detailing on this one, and then you can get like a slight variance in your plates and stuff. So the possibilities can be kind of endless, which is pretty cool. Go ahead and, but just be careful because it can get really heavy if you go too high. So I recommend you can do it this way, and then what you can do is once you have that detail solidified, you can detail and you can do it like you can decimate it or something like that, or you can, ultimately you would want to create like a displacement map or a normal map or something like that. But this is a pretty nice way to start with something. And then let's say, there was the pangolin has like these cool bright red, it should copy this. So if I, do something like that, and then I unedit mesh. No, I don't see it. Oh, there we go. I just didn't have the Polypaint turned on. So there you go. So you can see you can easily also Polypaint this to have a cool variance. And you can always go back, as long as it's in Nanomesh, I can always go back to that other index and edit it. And color pick that same thing. And on the other side, I can color pick that color. Right, and I can go ahead and paint that in. And then unedit, and there you go. So now we have plates that are all nice and poly painted. So you can kind of leave it like that for a while until you're kind of happy with, poly paint, and I can go ahead and paint the rest of this. Also, you'll see that you can still see the plane, so just remember you can say show placement, you can get rid of that. Now you can really see what it's going to look like at the end of it, which is pretty cool. So we can kind of pick a color here and PA. Maybe we can pick this kind of color and kind of paint over the top of our big cat here. And you know, I actually haven't played with this, but my guess is when we go to Transpose Master, we could probably just keep the Nanomesh, right? You can save this and copy it or something like that too. And then we should be able to pose it using just the single planes rather than having to move all of these plates at once. And it'll still be a Nanomesh and it'll update and it will keep all that info there, which will be pretty nice and fun too. So you can easily keep all that stuff. These are also really flat, so we can adjust the height of these, make these a little thicker. There we go, it's the offset. Yeah, there you go. You can start to get something a little... The pangolin ones are pretty thin, but they were feeling a little too thin. That was pretty thin, so we could do something, you know, find like a happy medium. But yeah, I mean, immediately that took us... It's a little painstaking, but if you really think about it, it didn't take us that long. I mean, if I can do it within a 2-hour stream, it's really not that crazy to do, and have ZBrush crash on me multiple times. So yeah, but you can see you can easily get something pretty detailed pretty quickly, and we can do the same thing with our Nanomesh that's here as well, because we can go ahead and edit that mesh, fill that object. And we're gonna subdivide that one. And we'll carve into that one too. Oops. And then we'll select that color, go into our paint, just to kind of finalize the look of this. There we go, and then we can say edit mesh, and now you have something that looks like that. Got to turn on the poly paint on. Oh, I wonder if these are accidentally backwards, actually. Oh, they are. See? There it is. But an easy enough fix. There you go. Go to the other one. Again, if you take this out of Nanomesh, right now it's laggy because it updates, you know, on the fly. But when you take this out of Nanomesh and make it a mesh, it will be pretty heavy. So just do keep that in mind. It's not going to have... It won't keep its subdivisions, but if it's subdivisible, you should be able to reconstruct the subdivisions once it's a Nanomesh if you delete the lower plane. And then you should be able to have something that's subdivisible, which is nice. And that's definitely something that you want with this. So I keep forgetting what I'm doing because I'm talking. There we go. And then we can paint little tips like that. But yeah, until you're happy with the final, you know, we don't have to do that yet. And this one had the same issue. It's got rotated the wrong. We can put it over here as well. This one's being funky. There we go. It's always like one slider that's gonna make it look weird at first, and then you just have to find out what slider is being the weird slider, and change it. This one's being very picky. I think it's partly because one of the rotations is a little off or something. So you just got to be really careful about, there we go, that's getting there. Just got to be careful about stuff like that, but that's getting there. But yeah, these rotations can get really picky very quickly. And a lot of it just has to do with dialing in these numbers. So that way once you find that number, that happy number that it likes, then you just adjust your geometry. Don't try to play with these sliders a whole bunch. Like I said before, if down here you find something that's working, then that just means that your your geometry up at the top or whatever it may be is just being a little weird or funky. And you just have to go and adjust that. Because like if I like this, then that means I just have to find out where to move these and see to find that. And again, this might be something that is easier to deal with separately, right? Because if I want a certain size for the top of these, then maybe the side planes I want to do something different. This is working fairly well. I think they stick out a little too much. Right, but again, adjusting look how much the polygon dictates what these look like. And so I think that's definitely the weirdest part and probably the hardest learning curve of using Nanomesh to get stuff like this going. So, but yeah, we're getting there. But yeah, with more adjustments and stuff, I'll probably have something looking pretty decent. I'm going to redo all the work that I did for the face, and then next week we should be able to kind of finalize all that stuff in post. And again, so if you guys are still around checking out this stuff, I appreciate it. Today was a day of frustrated, don't move a cylinder or else ZBrush will crash on you and kill you during stream. So that's always a lot of fun. We always have days like that. Nothing to worry about. Try not to get too stressed about it. It happens to everybody. It happens to me. It'll happen to you. We just have to kind of keep moving forward and keep doing our stuff. And hopefully get a cool looking result. So I think we're making decent progress. Of course, we ran into a lot of issues today, but again, thanks for sticking around and being with me. If you guys are still here for that, I think part of the reason it went so poorly was because Synth wasn't here today. We all know Synth in the chat. I think he's my little good luck charm. I'm now realizing, so we got to hunt him down and find him. But all jokes aside, thank you guys for joining me. And again, join me next week. This will be the final week of this character. And we're going to just go through doing a fun pose, and maybe we can get him into a scene with our mech character, or maybe we can get a bunch of them running around and chasing him or something like that. That could be kind of fun. That's maybe at least 2 different poses that we would do, but as long as ZBrush is nice, should be able to get it done. Anyway, thank you guys. This is Ashley signing off from Archetype, sponsored by Lenovo and AMD. So I appreciate you guys' support while watching and streaming. You guys have a good night. I'll catch you next time. Bye.